Let's move on because Hoyne's here. What was your overall observation from the weekend?
Tell you what, one of my observations won't be is a holding the ball discussion.
No,
that won't be
it does get a bit boring.
That won't be getting mentioned in the next 55 minutes on through here. I'll give you the tip. But so the overall observation, just to start with, and we spoke about this last week, Kane, while you were away. Was around Nick Daicos, and I just wanted to just have the discussion with you guys around sort of what do you value.
Well, you copped a bit of heat, didn't you?
Oh no, it was good.
Yeah.
What'd you have him rated 21st player on the ground?
Yeah, 21st rated player on the ground, and
coaches
that's fine.
gave him 10 votes.
Yeah, no, that's all good. But it was more just the broader discussion in terms of what do you actually value out of an individual. And if we have a look at the last 4 to 5 weeks, and we're just looking at midfielders here, we're forgetting about the halfback flankers, half forwards, and the key position players. There's only 4 players in the competition at the moment that have both of the main aspects ticked off, and both of the main aspects being how you win it and then what you do with it.
Okay.
The defensive actions come into play a little bit, but we're more assessing the absolute stars in those 2 aspects of the game: how you win it and then what you do with it.
So you got the 4?
Yeah, so the 4 midfielders at the moment that have both aspects ticked off: Isaac Rankin, Chad Warner, Jordan Dawson, and Zach Butters.
Yep,
are the 4 that are going extremely well in both aspects. So if we just have a look at a couple of midfielders and just take their examples and just have a look at what they're doing at the moment. So the Nick Daicos discussion. So Nick, whether that's just through design, through injury at the moment to a few of their midfielders, he's becoming a ball-winning midfield first and foremost over what he's doing with ball in hand. And over the last 4 weeks across the competition, he's the 16th highest rated player in the game. So he's going extremely well. There is no one in the competition that is having more impact through their ball-winning ability than what Nick is doing at the moment. The ball use aspect of Nick at the moment is 231st in the competition.
Which would floor 99.9% of our
and it's floored
audience.
Me, because we've never really, haven't really seen this, but I haven't really seen him do what he's doing at clearance and do what he's doing at contest at the moment as well to be the number 1 ball-winning midfielder in the competition. So in his back-to-back games in the last 2 weeks, in terms of what he's done through his ball use, there have been 2 of his 3 worst games across his 55, 60 games, however many games he's actually played across his career. But what he's done at contest and clearance has been amazing. So what do you value with Nick? Do you value what he's doing at contest and clearance and over what he's doing with ball use? Or are you looking at Nick going, I actually want to get more damage and I want to get that more ball use return through his elite kicking that we've seen him for his first 50, 55 games at the moment. So I think at the moment,
Nick the surgeon.
So I think at the moment we're looking at Nick in a different way. We're looking at ball winning Nick, not ball use Nick at the moment, and that's okay. As I said, there's only 4 midfielders at the moment that have both aspects ticked off, and then you go to another midfielder, and we just talked about him before, Errol Goulden. And it's the other way around. So over the last 4 weeks, he's the 21st rated player in the competition. So going extremely well. Overall,
okay.
Just complete package, 21st. So going really well. Then you break down his performance. What he does with ball in hand is the 4th best of any player in the competition. The ball winning side of things is just inside the top 100. So going okay, but that's not him. Are you happy with that profile, or are you looking at Errol going, geez, can we get any more out of it? I'm looking at Errol going, I'm happy with that. Like, I want the footy in your hands, as you just used that word before, surgeon type, precision, creative, scoreboard impact return, rather than the absolute contest inside ball winner. Then you get to someone like a James Rowbottom. So James Rowbottom overall is actually going quite well at the moment and balances up that Sydney midfield to be a top 60 player in the competition. There's no one that's having greater impact on the game at the moment through their defensive actions than what James Rowbottom is doing at the moment. So that's, all round, his tackles, his pressure, his smothering. There's no one that's having greater impact on the game than what he's doing from a pressure sense. But then the ball winning and the ball use component, that's not really him. But if I'm John Longmire, I'm looking at that and I'm looking at that magnet going, that's what I value. I value the number 1 defensive action player off the back of what we've got with Warner and Healy and Goulden. It's the perfect balance that Sydney have.
It's like MasterChef. You've got to have the sweet and the sour.
Yeah.
You've got to have it balanced right.
Yeah, and getting back to the Daicos discussion, I know we all get a little bit carried away with this, but, over his 50, 55 games, I mean, he's tracking to be, potentially, one of the best players that we've seen, if not, the second best player that I've seen behind Gazza. I've said that on this show for a couple of years. Gazza is by far and away number one, and then that second, third, fourth, throw up whoever you like. We haven't seen this version of Nick. Are we going to see this version of Nick for the remainder of the year? Is this just a Band-Aid fix until, DeGoey comes back in 4 or 5 weeks' time, Mitchell comes back or not? That's the interesting discussion for me. What do you value with him? Number one ball winner in the competition, ball use, got a bit of work to do.
Where do you, how do you report on Zach Merritt?
Yeah, so Zach Merritt's going really well on both sides of the ball, just not in the top 10, top 15 sort of midfielders in both aspects. Nice ball user, nice ball winner, so nice package. Are you happy with that or not? Yeah, there's other actions, and I get it, and I'll get smashed. There's other actions that we can see, his leadership, the big moment tackles, all that sort of stuff that, you laud. But, in terms of what he's doing at the moment, going really well, just not in that bracket of Dawson and Heaney and Warner and these guys.
All right, let's get stuck into your 7 main talking points. Essendon have been a topic of discussion most weeks.
Yeah, they have, and I reckon there's a fortnight ago they beat GWS, and there's a lot of conversation around them at the moment and have they changed. And we always go off the 6-week profile, and the impressive thing if you're an Essendon supporter is that this is getting better and better by the week, and it's continuing to be a profile that we have not seen for a long time. So last 6 weeks, ranked 11th in terms of what they do with the footy, which is very unusual for them, but third best team without the footy. So what they're doing defensively at the moment, they are the second hardest team in the competition over the last 6 weeks when you win possession to get a scoreboard return from that.
That would be the first time that's ever been said by you
about Essendon
since John Worsfold was captain of West Coast.
And I had this, and I must admit, I got this late, so I couldn't get our guys to go back and see when was the last time we sent that over a 6-week period. Yeah. I in my time doing this, I can't remember an Essendon team being second in the most important defensive metric that you can look at over a 6-week period. Clearly, the number one team in that area is Sydney, and they're only just in front of Essendon at the moment. Everyone's lauding what Sydney are doing. Yeah. Essendon to be number 2 in that. There's no harder team to convert a clearance against and get it on the scoreboard than what Essendon are doing, and they are the second hardest team to get a turnover against on the scoreboard than what Essendon are doing.
So I asked this of Kane last night. In fact, I asked it of someone else last night. When do we acknowledge that improvement and say they are genuine contenders? Because everybody said they've got to play this side and that side and this side, but ultimately they've played enough sides now. There's a spectrum of 11 games.
Oh no, they're coming, and they're coming with a rush now.
Yeah. I've still got a doubt on them.
No, I think
I'm not fully sold.
No. But I think that's the competition, though.
Yeah.
Like me and you talked about this last week, what's real and what's not real. And I hate doing this, but there's so many teams at the moment that we're not going to be able to judge until hindsight.
Well, people were doubting Melbourne and with 4 weeks to go, and then they went bang, bang, bang in the finals. I mean, that's a reality of coming from the bottom to the top.
But this has a point of difference to it. So on this show last year, halfway through, we talked when they were 9 and 6, whatever they were, and people were saying you can trust Essendon, and we were saying just hold your horses. Yep. Like not much had actually changed.
You didn't trust them at all.
No, not much. We had not seen anything like this. So how they were defending at the start of the year last year, they were conceding 55, 60 entries, and they were almost defending behind the ball, allowing entries to come in, and we'll try and hold up down there. That is not a sustainable way of defending. Over the last 6 weeks, 61 entries a game they're generating, and they're conceding 46 entries a game. That's the model off the back of being the second hardest team to turn possession into a score against. That's the stuff that, if I'm an Essendon supporter and us, that's why I'm starting to get a bit more belief. And I'll put my hand up. I've been probably slower than a lot in terms of coming around to this.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
You don't move until the numbers move, though, Hoyne.
Yeah, and this is this is moving, and this is moving in a positive way. The interesting one for me, and the next 2 weeks are going to be fascinating for Essendon. Go up to Gold Coast, play Gold Coast, totally different story playing Gold Coast on the Gold Coast Sunday twilight, I think it is. Can't wait for that one. And then you got Carlton the week after. The clearance returns the last 2 weeks against poor opposition, being Richmond and North Melbourne. They've been belted around clearance. If that happens against a Gold Coast and a Carlton the next 2 weeks, that's going to put this defensive system under enormous stress, if you like. But what they're doing at the moment, this is the most sustainable brand I think that we've seen from an Essendon team over a 6-week period in God knows how long.
Bombers fans, what do you reckon? The Harcourt's open line 1300 736 736. Let's move on to the Hawks, who, when was it that you spoke about what they were doing? Well, they certainly weren't going well from a win-loss perspective when you put their post-clearance ground ball on the agenda and where that sits historically. Now what are you seeing? They're turning it into wins.
Yeah, it's I think there was a little bit of we talked about about a month ago.
Yeah, it was off the back of a poor loss,
Sydney.
I reckon. You were just
Sydney.
just hold.
Yeah, it was against Sydney, and I
round 7.
I find Sam Mitchell really interesting to listen to. I feel like he gives you a fair bit. I love when he speaks to you guys. Every fortnight on a Friday, his press conferences, and I think he clearly knows what he's doing. And, a lot of the time we can get carried away with the W's and L's. And at that stage, they get belted by Sydney by 70 points and people are questioning him. And he says, if you take the scoreboard out of it,
That's right.
I can see it. Yeah, absolutely you can. If I'm Hawthorn, and Jack Ginnivan said with you on Monday morning, Kane, we're not too sure if finals are realistic or not. It's not about 2024 for this team. It's about what's happening 2026, 2027, where they're genuinely going to be able to hopefully launch for a top 4, top 6 spot. But what's been impressive is just the evolution of this team as this season has gone on. So we spoke about their post-clearance work is number one in the competition. But at the start of the year, this midfield group was getting belted, more often than not. Essendon got a hold of them. Sydney got a hold of them. Geelong got a hold of them a little bit. But what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 weeks is that this group is starting to evolve. Potentially that's off the back of Will Day coming in, who's 5 weeks, very rare. His 5 weeks have got better and better and better and better. And then it's off, on the weekend against Brisbane. Like there's not too much in this game in terms of what actually happened. It's just more the power and the efficiency of what Hawthorn did with ball in hand. That was the biggest difference in the game, and especially what they did out of stoppage. So to generate almost 10 goals out of stoppage, we've only seen that done by a Sam Mitchell team 3 times. But their ability to chain out by hand and be really aggressive and not just get it, dump it, and let's see what happens. Now, we're going to actually really challenge them. So when they exited by hand, they scored 9 times on the weekend. When they exited by foot, they only scored 3. So I don't know what you guys thought when watching that, but a lot of clean exits, and getting these high half forwards. We've spoken about getting these high half forwards who can get up to stoppage and can get involved in the transition game. They have them. Ginnivan, Moore, McDonald plays a really important role in that to then be able to chain out and actually be really powerful in what they're actually doing. And I think I'm interested in in what you guys think. I think there's one other addition to this midfield mix that I'm looking to actually see over the next 6 to 8 weeks, and that's Cam McKenzie. So, they're pretty consistent in what they've got with Connor Nash and Will Day and Newcomb and Warple. A lot of their strength areas out of that group is their ball winning ability, not necessarily what they do with ball in hand. I think this guy has that point of difference that can be potentially that distributor for them. So he's playing more of a wing role at the moment, performing really well in that role. But there's just a couple of little moments on the weekend, that delivery inside 50 to Marbiel Chol. I'm not sure, if you remember it in that first quarter, second quarter. Beautiful kick. Really nice to be able to complement what that midfield group does from a ball winning perspective. And the best part about those 4 or 5, they're all 24, 25 and under. They're going to be playing a lot of footy together. So, and we take it back 2 years, best part of 45 games. I still can't remember when they lost against Sydney at the SCG round 2, and everyone's calling them a disgrace for the decision that they made at list management, what Sam Mitchell wants to do. He just wants to go all out youth. It's an embarrassment. It's an indictment on the competition.
He fronted up in the hot seat with you, Kane.
Yeah, and he did, and he always has. He did that last year.
And he handles himself so well, I find. I'm not sure what you find, but yeah. And just relax.
No, I'm seat 1A on the Sam Mitchell train. What about the Crows?
Yeah, so love what Adelaide are doing. So they've got a point of difference now, which they didn't have the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. And I'm not sure what you guys would have thought 4 to 6 weeks ago, but to have a look at a fixture Saturday afternoon, 1:45, Hawthorn Adelaide, and now I'm sitting there going, I can't wait for this.
Yeah.
This is going to be a cracking game to watch with high speed, high ball movement, real aggression. And that's what Adelaide are bringing to the table. So if you're Hawthorn, be prepared for this ball movement and aggression with ball in hand out of their back half to really challenge you, sort of with that defensive model. And across the whole season this year. So we talk about, everyone talks about the forward half game, you've got to score off the back of that. But you need a point of difference to be able to score out of the back half. 4 of the last 5 premiers have been number 1 at that, over the last 5 years. Currently, number 1 team in the competition, Sydney. Sydney, Geelong, Adelaide are now 3rd in terms of being able to generate scores out of the back half. You go to a 6-week period, clearly the number 1 team in the competition at being able to generate scores out of the back half. And it's full credit to a few of their personnel down there, because in all due respect, if you look at the Magnets individually, you go, it's not really sort of anyone behind the footy where you look at, you go. But and I remember Matty Nix at GWS, he was and not taking anything away from Leon Cameron, but he was given a lot of the credit for their ball movement and aggression with ball in hand and what you dubbed the Orange Tsunami.
Yep.
A lot of that was to do with what he introduced and what he brought into the system. You look at what they're doing at the moment. They lost that for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season this season, but that was them last year. That's why they were so dangerous last year, and now they've got that back. And for him and the Adelaide coaches to be able to get that back with some of the personnel challenges perhaps that they have behind the footy. And I'll put my hand up. I'm sitting there at round 4, round 5 going, geez, they can't move it. They're not getting anything out of it. Do you put Jordan Dawson behind the ball? They did the complete opposite. They put Dawson more to that, potentially 75 midfield, 25% forward. But it's just been a natural,
Well, Hinge has been
evolution.
Fantastic for him. He generates a lot of the crow flow.
He has. and the other one is Michael Annie as well. So you look at Michael Annie. So over this 6-week period, Jordan Dawson is number 1 in the competition at turning a defensive half intercept into a score.
Yeah.
Michael Annie is top 10 in the competition at being able to do that.
It's his second year.
Which and maybe I've misread this. I just thought he was more of that lockdown.
No, he's an excellent interceptor. There's a bit of Jake Lever about him.
Really?
And he takes big jobs, and he has the composure to handle those big jobs, but then doesn't just get man focused. He's happy to be that interceptor, and he's a pretty good ball user. I think he's a star. So, Hoyne, the Crows and Gerard, they're 12th. They're 18 points, 4 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw. Are they the team most likely to do a GWS or a Carlton last year and get on a serious run? Have they got the profile from what you're saying? It sounds like they are.
No, last 6 weeks their profile's in really good shape, and the good thing for them is that as we keep talking about, everything's so tight. So I don't even know where they are on the ladder, 12th, 13th.
12th.
They might be 6 points out, or whatever.
Equal
it is.
with Brisbane.
But we keep talking a lot on this show. It's more how you're playing, and then the results will start to sort of take shape. I mean, it's a huge loss this week with no Rankin being there. I mean, Rankin is the number 1 rated player in the competition over the last 6 weeks. So it's a challenge this week. If they can somehow get through this week, I've got no idea what they've got.
Richmond
the week
after that.
Oh, well, they've got Richmond after. This is a massive game for them. So if you look at that then, and I hate doing the fixture side of things, this is why this week's a massive win. They get to this week, they should then be even with a ledger at the halfway stage.
Richmond at Adelaide Oval, Sydney at Adelaide Oval before the bye.
Off the back of a really slow, sluggish, unusual start for them, then yeah, absolutely they're going to be in it. The player that I've just wanted to throw up before we move on from the Adelaide discussion is Darcy Fogarty and his form over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I think the question has always been on Darcy whether or not he actually does enough. I mean, his accuracy in front of goal, really sets him apart. But can he get involved more? Can he win more of the ball? And you look at the last 4 or 5 weeks, 14 to 15 disposals more often than not. In those performances, it is like I'm looking at this going. This potentially are we finally seeing what Adelaide have been wanting and have been patient and have been hoping that they were going to get at the draft table all those years ago? Because we haven't seen him win as much of the ball as what he has over a 4 or 5 week period. We've seen it in glimpses here or there, but over a 4 or 5 week period.
All right, guess who, Hoyne? Which direction have you gone tonight?
So over the last 4 weeks, this player has had a positional change over the last month. Since making that positional change, he is now rated inside the top 15 players in the competition.
All right. We're playing Guess Who with Champion Data's Daniel Hoyne live in the studio. As always, there's been a player who's had a positional change in the last month. He's now rated since then inside the top 15 players in the league. A lot of text coming through. Ed Richards, Perryman, Sidebottom, Nick Martin, Crisp, Hardwick, Holmes, Heppel, Dawson, Tom McDonald, Zach Fisher, a lot of Max Holmes, bit of Lohman at the lines, bit of Scott Pendlebury. Gerard?
Well, I reckon it's a discussion in two. You've got Ed Richards and you've got Jack Crisp.
Kane?
I would have said...
Geez, he's confident with Jack Crisp, though, too. He's been bouncing around between the
Jackie Crisp, slow start, but geez, he's bounced around lately.
Yeah, I would have... I like the Max Holmes guess, actually.
Yeah, no, not a bad guess. I'll get into a little bit of Max later on. Unfortunately, it's not them. Harry Sheasel.
Really?
Harry Sheasel. So it was a bit of a topic, wasn't it? Probably 6 to 7 weeks ago. Is it time for Harry to move off the halfback flank, and we've got to get him through the midfield and get him forward? And then Clarko's done it over the last 4 weeks, playing that 60% forward or 50-50 forward mid sort of role. And after round 7, he was almost inside the top 50 playing behind the footy.
Yeah.
But since he's gone to that role, number 15,
what's he doing well
in the competition? And we talked, and you guys talked about Zach Merritt, before, and where he actually sits. It's Harry's ability to be able to impact the game on both sides of the ball. So his ball winning ability has actually probably been the one that surprised me. So top 25 in the competition with the impact that he's doing through his ball winning ability, and still inside the top 50 in terms of what he's doing through his ball use. And the good thing for me is, and this is where we talk a lot on this show. We're measuring impact, not just disposals. So over this 4 week period, he's only had 30 plus once, and he's had 24, 21 and 25 in 3 of those 4 weeks. But it's the impact and the damage that he's actually having through what he's actually doing when winning it, how he's winning it, and now he's actually winning it in more dangerous areas. I don't think we'll be seeing him go back to that halfback flank role anytime soon.
How far away are we from getting all this stuff live, Hoyne?
We have it live. We're just in terms of how we get it properly live, we've got a little bit of work to do, but it is there. It is there live. And then the other one I just want to shout out for North, given that we actually don't speak about them too much on this show, is LDU and the form that this guy's in at the moment. So the last 6 weeks, he's also in the top 20 players in the competition. And one of those rare players that's actually impacting the game through both his ball winning and ball use ability. So only looking at midfielders, top 10 in both areas of the ground. So I'm fascinated to see what happens with this guy at the end of the year. How what clubs come to him? Can North hang on to him? What he's going to get offered?
He's contract till the end of next year, isn't he?
Yeah. But I don't know. And maybe this is a ridiculous call, but I can look at this guy. He's got Brownlow medal attributes. I think if he gets to a team, or if North can get to an 8 to 10 to 12
and if
seasons,
he buys in defensively, like a Zach Merritt has bought in defensively. Now that would be hard to do when you're getting smacked every week. I understand that, but some of his defensive stuff is really poor. But I agree, and probably Zerha's the other one. Like the skies could be the limit. I think in a good side versus what he's delivering. Hoyne's not sure about Zerha.
I'm just not sure. I mean, he's 24, 25 now. We've never really seen it. And I asked this a couple of weeks ago whether or not he can get to that fitness level of being a 60 to 70% midfielder to be able to impact games like we've seen a DeGoey change from that forward to mid-roll, Heaney change from that forward to mid-roll.
Might put together my list of players who, if they were fitter and took it seriously, could be serious players.
That would be a good
list. The list might start with Cam Rayner, And certainly Zerha would be in the mix as well. Let's continue your 7 main talking points. We'll get on to the Blues.
Love what Carlton did on the weekend. We talked last week around, potentially Gold Coast coming down here. Just don't panic, they get rolled. But more what Carlton actually did as opposed to the actual result.
What did they do?
And their ability to get their transition and to get their turnover game back, that was the number one thing that came out of that performance on the weekend. First 4 or 5 weeks of the season, they had it intact. It dropped away over the next 5 to 6 weeks of the year. And I don't.
Did it have anything to do with one ruckman, Hoyne?
No, potentially. I don't know. Potentially, the numbers are there, but I don't mind.
Yes.
I don't mind it's such a long season. I don't mind clubs having a look at it, But I reckon if you're a Carlton, I'm not sure what you guys think now. If I'm a Carlton supporter, I'm looking at that going, just give De Koning the keys.
Give it to him.
Well done with Pitnet. Like you've got Pitnet locked away for the next 2 or 3 years.
He's actually perfect. I was like, why sign him for 4 years? But the more I think about it, it's like, he can't go anywhere. Even if he wants to go to Geelong, but Carlton just say, nah, you can't go.
And he wouldn't be costing you too much.
Not much at all. And then he's perfect if the Koning gets injured. So it's actually a reasonable position that they're in with him. But I mean, I've seen him play aggressive finals to Koning, and he is a leader of that midfield. I think with the way he plays, not the way that necessarily speaks or anything like that. But I love his game.
I like the move of Zach Williams forward. Kicked goals on the weekend. He's been there for a couple of weeks. He was really struggling in the back half. Loose. They were isolating him in the goal square. They've turned a negative into a positive. Now the question is, can he stay on the track and continue to do it?
Yeah, and just getting back to the De Koning conversation. I mean, that was the highest rated game of his season this year.
Yep.
But it was more the impact that he actually had in the match around contest and clearance. I mean, Paddy Cripps' game was enormous. But, De Koning to have, close to 10 clearances himself, to have almost 15 contested possessions up against Jared Witts, who, that's his bread and butter. He just looked like he thrived. And, we constantly said across the competition, the ruckmen just want to be rucks. Yeah. They just want to be the number one rucks. And then for them to be able to get their transition game going from the back half, to be able to do it, when we haven't seen a Carlton team move the footy like that from one end of the ground to the other for, years. To be able to score almost 75, 80 points out of their back half is something that we just don't
Good
associate.
game on Thursday night in Adelaide against Port Adelaide.
Oh, great game. Great game. That's the profile that got us excited about Carlton after round 4 or 5. That's the profile that I'm looking at that going, if Carlton dished this up for the remainder of the season, they are absolutely every chance to be the number 2 seed going up against Sydney as the number 1 challenger, because that's the sustainable profile. Don't get so consumed about what happens at contest and clearance. That was still strong about against Gold Coast. Get consumed about what you did against Gold Coast and what happened the first 4 or 5 weeks. That's the sustainable profile.
Right, you tell us not to overreact from week to week. What about 4 weeks in a row when we look at Geelong?
Start reacting.
Yeah, no, you got to start reacting after 4 weeks.
So it's okay to react now?
No, you got to start reacting after 4 weeks, absolutely. But I think there's issues and then there's real issues.
Let's start there. What are the real issues?
So the real issues for me, and I keep talking about this, the turnover game, 17 of the last 18 premiers been top 3 in it. That's the real. If that
so
aspect,
where were they when they won in 22?
Number 1.
Were they?
Number 1 in the comp, miles ahead of anyone else. I still talk about that 2022 profile is the best profile I've seen by any team.
You said you would have put your house
time.
on it about round 16, didn't you?
That was the best profile. It's the most perfect profile I've seen in my 15, 20 years of doing this job. But so right now they are still the second best turnover team in the competition. That wasn't their issue against GWS. They outscored GWS by almost 20 points. That wasn't their issue against Port Adelaide. They won that aspect of the game against Port Adelaide. That wasn't necessarily their issue against Melbourne. Melbourne only just got them in that game. The Gold Coast game absolutely wiped off the park in that area. That was the outlier. I'm not too concerned around that. But I think the reality is, and again, trying to be respectful, but with this midfield group that they have at the moment, they need to be at around about the 185 to 190 pressure rating. AFL average is 180. They need to be scrapping and pressuring the opposition to then allow them to get involved in this turnover game. So you've almost got, if I'm them, you almost got a 15 to 20 second window. You just got to fight for your life, scrap. You might lose the clearance on raw, but you just got to scrap for that 15 to 20 seconds. You kill that aspect of the game, then your 1 wood comes into play. So when they have had a pressure rating of over 185 this year, which has happened in 20 quarters, they have not been outscored by more than 2 goals in a quarter.
Protects their backline
in 20. When they get under that, and their worst quarters this year, when they've been belted against GWS and they've been belted against Port Adelaide, their pressure dips to 170. I understand it is a hard way to play for a 24-week period, which is why I think you're seeing an inconsistent lull at the moment. The Gold Coast game is the exception, right? That was just an outlier. That's why you're seeing a lull in the GWS game, and I think that's why you're seeing a lull in the Port Adelaide game at the moment. It's a hard way to play for a 24-week period. So the question is, how do you address this at the moment? The Max Holmes addition to me in the midfield in the weekend, huge tick. I would not be moving him to halfback for the rest of the season. He's your point of difference. Unfortunately for them, you have to rely on a 34-year-old danger to come back in, but I look at that and I go, everyone's relying on their best players. So people keep going, but you can't rely on it. But you have to. Melbourne rely on Max Gawn. Max Gawn's not there. It changes the whole profile. If Nick Daicos isn't there for Collingwood, it changes the whole profile. You do rely on your best players, regardless of age and where they sit. The interesting one for me moving forward, and the irony in this is that we're into mid-season draft time tomorrow night. They take a mid-season draft selection last year, their only mid-season draft selection, with a bloke by the name of Mitch Hardy. And the Geelong profile and the Geelong system is we get you in, we teach you, we develop you, you learn how to play our way, be prepared to spend a bit of time in the VFL. His form at VFL level at the moment, second for score involvements across the competition of all midfielders at the moment, doing it at a really nice balance. I'm looking at it this week going, there's no Jai Clark through suspension. There's no Blitzar through suspension. Can this guy be your Jai Newcomb? Can he be your Sam Durham to get you into the midfield and just complement in a way the competitiveness to allow Holmes and Dangerfield, when Dangerfield is back, to get things rolling? Because if they just break even, they're not going to destroy you from clearance. They're not going to be a Carlton. They're not going to be a Collingwood. They're not going to be... But they have the most important aspect of the game in good shape. Potentially, I'll be looking at someone, and again, with all due respect, against Richmond this week, that's something that I'll be looking... I don't want to go back to the players that have already been in there, that have been there for years, like a Parfitt or an O'Connor. Have a look at something different. Because I don't know what you're going to get. 12 months ago, you drafted this guy. He's been in your system now for 12 months. Potentially Saturday night is the one to try something new. You don't know what you're going to get. 2 years ago, the halfway stage of the year, they had the same issue. Their turnover game was in great shape. Their midfield was the reason why they were 5-4, 6-4. They threw Tom Atkins in as a point of difference. He didn't look back. They threw Blitzarves in as a point of difference. He didn't look back. Things got rolling. So I'm not absolutely giving up on where they are.
So it's Mitch Hardy.
Just keep an eye.
This would be big. One of Hoyne's
be good.
best ones.
Good feedback here. Live feedback on the Temper Text. Sick of this station trying to get North players to move clubs. Give it a break, you morons, says Steve. And
pumped you up.
A word on Brisbane before we have a little break.
Yeah, we just talked about Hawthorn before and how dynamic and powerful they were out of stoppage. And the issue, it's been a bit of a frustration at times with Brisbane this year, their inability to be able to convert, winning that first possession and then chaining out to actually get a clearance return. So in terms of teams, when they win a first possession and then getting the clearance and getting it out from stoppage, they're the second worst in the competition at turning that possession into a clearance. Last year, they were the third best in the competition. And there's two individuals that are absolutely front and centre of this. So of the top 50 players in the competition at winning a first possession, Lachie Neale has the worst return of any player in the competition at turning his first possession into a clearance.
Really?
His partner in crime, Josh Dunkley, has the third worst return of any player in the competition.
That's this year, not historically.
So they're converting 6 out of 10 of their first possessions into a clearance. The best player in the competition is Libba, who's converting 9 out of 10. Jai Caldwell, 9 out of 10, being responsible for what Essendon are doing at stoppage as well. There's a couple others there, so that are around that 90% mark. So and just
Been an issue for a while for him, or just this year? Oh.
Yeah, his returns just haven't been the same. Probably now for the last 12 months or so that we've seen from Lockie, at his absolute prime. So. Yeah, that's where I'll be putting a little bit of focus in on that. If you're going to be that inside player, that's where I'm sort of going